Radio, your information station. We have a pinch hitter today from Presiding Commissioner Daryl Skiles. Daryl out with some concussion symptoms. And if anybody's ever had a concussion, and that can happen. You can get a lot of different things go wrong with you. You can kind of get vertigo. You kind of get just equilibrium problems, sensitivity to light, and different things of that nature. So he's not here today. But we've got a good pinch hitter. Guy came all the way from Jeff City. Mr. Ryan Copeland, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, thank you. And we want to put our prayers out for Daryl. Hope he gets better quicker, and appreciate him letting me take his time here today.
Well, we appreciate you making it down. Now, Daryl did send me a text, though. Wants to remind people that he's still at home. He's still working. He's working a lot of stuff by phone. Worked with a Public Housing Authority board meeting where he was reelected vice chair, so he's still working at it. He also was on the phone to the TAC committee last night where they did recommend a $300,000 grant award to the city of Rolla for some handicapped sidewalk improvements. And then he also participated by phone in the MRPC board meeting where they were talking about federal legislative representatives and different things of that nature and priorities. And he also, as we all know, Daryl's on the road a lot, and he's been working on the phone with the County Commission Association of Missouri for legislative issues close to home. So they'll be seeing you probably next week.
Yeah, Daryl's been up several times at the Capitol, and we discuss issues that we need to look at here locally and statewide abroad as well. So.
Yeah, very good. So anyhow, so we're not going to talk about too much county business, but a little bit of some state business and things going on. As I was mentioning around, we got, I was at an R80 board meeting last night, and they were mentioning a little bit about some property tax pullbacks, because we all know that a lot of cars and vehicles got reassessed at a higher value, and all of a sudden people's property taxes really took a jump.
Oh, yeah, that's one of the main things. I think there's several bills being heard on that. We've heard Roger Reedy, Representative Reedy's bill, I think, is moving through the House. It's going to affect that to make it more of a appropriate assessed value than what happened in the last year on assessment values.
Well, and this does affect things because property taxes obviously affect schools and the county taxes and things of that nature, because everybody at the end of the year always gets, their nice little yellow slips and stuff, and this is what you're going to pay in property taxes. But anybody who had a number of different vehicles, Ron, and you know as well as I do, that property tax this year might have been a little bit of a sticker shock compared to previous years.
Oh, that's why I understand. I heard some mine didn't go up as much. I guess I did notice a little bit, but there's some people that went up dramatically on assessed value, and it's kind of, you feel like your vehicle's getting older, and then all of a sudden your taxes go up. You'd think it wouldn't go up as much, but I think we're trying to fix that in the House and the Senate. There's several bills out there that would maybe address that, and I look forward to doing that. And I think they're going to move, because I think we realize that the assessed value isn't a fair assessment because of inflation and the things that happen, and the things that happened in the last few years. Things went crazy, Yeah. So.
Well, people were selling used cars for about what they paid for when they bought it new, and so, you can see where the idea of the increase in assessed valuation comes there. But in a true, absolute market, the value of your vehicle, you know as well as I do, you drive it off the lot and you lose 10, 15% the day you drive it off, so
yeah,
if not more, so
we could go down a lot of tubes on what we pay after it gets older, right?
You bet.
You'd think insurance would go down as well, but that's an assessed value. They assess that by parts and what goes up into the vehicle to repair it as well. So, but no, that's one of the things that I think is important. I think there's some property tax bills out there I don't know where they're going as far as yet. Still fresh in the session, so I look forward to do that. So that's one of our priorities, is the property assessment values and taxes, to see how we can help the working class people,
Okay, so another thing that was kind of brought up at R80, and this might be a little bit odd to what maybe the norm, and you said it's went on a little bit last year, was open enrollment for schools. And, okay, so I live at Salem R80, and I pay my R80 district taxes, and I'm a resident of Salem R80. But if a kid who's in Rolla wants to come to Salem with open enrollment, he would be able to actually choose to do that, couldn't he?
With the current one, I think there's there's a lot of different.
There's two bills that they're talking about.
Yeah, and I think Representative Pollock is the one that was last year that passed the House as well, kind of an open enrollment type deal. The open enrollment is a big issue across the state. I think our rural areas do a really good job in schools, and we have good oversight with our school boards. I think a lot of this is getting pushed from more of the urban areas
Cities.
where you see problems where the schools aren't up to par, so everybody wants to go somewhere else, and they're trying to say the parents should have the rights to pick, and I kind of agree with that in a way, but at the same time, when we have a system to where you live is where you go to school, we've lived by that forever. Can that change? It may. What we got to watch out for is our rural schools do a very good job, and the suburban areas are getting bigger, and there's more of a push for my kid needs to go here, and we're providing a decent education. Is it because it's a bad education? I can see if your kid, if there's not getting a good education into school, that option should be given. Mm-hmm. But if you're doing a good job with the students, and I just want to go somewhere, that's a whole different deal, because that's on that part. But open enrollment in this area I think it would have kind of affect that. And I haven't read the current bill because usually it'll change 3 or 4 times before it comes to the floor. So usually I'll wait, but I've been watching part of that. If it's similar to the one last year, it gave the option of the school to participate. So that's what, if our schools in this area do not want to participate in open enrollment, I have to look at that this year, but it was in that bill last year, that they wouldn't have to participate, so it doesn't have a big push on us, we do a good job, in these schools. But when you get into inner cities and other places, the education system is, I could give you my opinion on that if you want it. Well, and it's not going to, I think it's the lack of discipline and issues in the areas. They don't want to discipline a student in a urban area. I know at R3, when I was there, we had, there was a discipline process.
Sure.
And they knew that if their child would not follow the rules or participate or cause a ruckus, then they would pull them out so it didn't affect the rest of the students. I know firsthand, I know teachers that have been in the urban areas, and they said they would never let their kids go there because kids get up, flip the teachers off, cuss them, walk out of the room, cause a disruption, and there's no follow-up with that, or no discipline process. And I don't mean spanking, or nothing like that, but you need to pull the disruption out of the classroom so that other students that are there to learn. But I think we've got away from that. That's my personal opinion, right? Yeah.
But in the past, and I'm not going to beleaguer anybody who, if they have done this and you're listening and you have seen this happen or whatever. But I grew up in an urban area where kids would be, one side of the street was one school district and the other side of the street was a different school district. Some parents would have a grandparent living in that other district they wanted them to go to, and they'd use that address for their address for that child to go to the different district, or in some cases, even here in the rural areas, people have actually rented an apartment so they can send their child to a different school with having that as their address. Now, they're supposed to be their permanent address, their voting address. But it may or may not be, but they've done that in the past to try and get around that system. So, there has been ways that they've already done that without offering open enrollment. My thing is open enrollment. If I have I'm not sure how this will work. So, again, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. But if I'm paying taxes at Salem and a Salem student, and I don't have any kids, I'm not paying school taxes, and a student in Salem says, I want to go to St. James, or I want to go to Owensville. And then they go up there. Well, I'm paying for their education to be here. Well, what gives them the right to go up there? Because they want to?
I think that they're getting into more of a broad decision that a parent should be allowed to make that decision, and they're paying taxes, so they should get to pick. But it's the system.
I'm paying taxes too.
It's the system we have. What about the people who have no kids in the school district?
They're
paying.
About.
So it's a system that I think has been successful. You're just seeing, I want, and I do think parents, if I wanted my daughter to go to Rolla or somewhere else, and it was important to me, then I would dig in and do the best I can. Now, I know there was bills last year. I haven't read it, haven't seen them yet this year. If I own property in Rolla, say I own property in
Right.
Cuba,
Right.
and I want my child to go to Cuba, then that should be allowed as not a primary residence, because I am paying property tax, and there was
Sure.
a minimum amount of time that you had to own it, and a minimum amount of, you couldn't be like just 1 square inch.
Right.
There was a minimum, so you're still playing that, I guess, a game, or playing the system of saying we are paying property tax. It doesn't have to be my own
Sure.
residence. Because if I'm renting, am I paying any property tax?
No.
I'm not. If I rent in Salem, I'm not paying property tax. The owner of the
Owner of the
thing.
property.
So if I
yeah.
own property in Cuba, I'm paying somebody's paying property
Sure.
tax. So it was one way to say, okay, that because that could have been an issue, kind of a step in that direction to appease that. But as far as I go, I can see open enrollment, why it's being pushed in urban areas, because some kids' schools are not very good,
I'll get it. Yeah.
and they want to go over here. So open enrollment gives them an option to do a better school. I think we shouldn't push it statewide. We should fix the schools that are having the issues.
There you go.
Instead of, and that's why charter schools are popping up, in certain areas over certain. It has to be, we never have a charter in Salem. There's not enough kids to participate, and I don't think we need one, because I think our school districts are pretty good. I will throw in, I think sometimes when DESE gets involved, they make rules and mandates for our schools to follow, and it's statewide. And I've talked to several superintendents throughout the district in the last 2 years, and if they don't have a problem with DESE making guidelines, but guidelines are just say, hey, these are the things we think you should do.
Yeah.
But then the superintendent and the school district gets to decide exactly what they do. Because when they pass a rule or a mandate, we're going to lose money here, we're going to punish you here,
Oh,
we're
you
going to take
bet.
this, we're going to take this. So have some guidelines to give the school districts and superintendents flexibility to their area and their needs. Our needs may not be the same as in St. Louis or Waynesville. I mean, we have different issues that we got to address, but we got to follow DESE's rules and guidelines.
Foundation formula. Been hearing that forever and ever. Remember, and that has gone, I think the last 15, 20 years, that's undergone so many changes. Doesn't even resemble what it used to. It's a lot harder to come up with that per student, that charge should be.
I think I've tried to ask them. I went to meetings with educational people. I mean, you have a room of 50 people in them educations, and I asked for, can you give me the information so I can look up how the formula is assessed or made, right? I think I need a degree in something to do that, because it refers you to this statute, to this statute, to this statute, to this statute, and you have to go to this rule and then that rule.
Yeah.
It's so antiquated and so difficult. A normal person cannot do that. They go with free and reduced lunch. People get this, and so much for this, and so much for this.
Transportation here.
I've been pushing up in Jeff City. This push is to give teachers pay raises, and I think that local control can take care of that. And I tell people, school board has the ability to raise that property tax for schools. When you start taking it from the state, how do we determine how much they get per teacher? Because St. Louis may say this, we say this. What is the right salary, right?
Sure.
And I think they are underpaid. But we can step that up. I would like to see the state take all the transportation costs, because that's pretty easy to determine statewide, right? This is how many miles we did. You write that check, and they can take their savings and give that towards their teachers, in a way. It's just a way to finagle the funds, and it's easy to say this is what the transportation cost is. It's 65 cents a mile, or we get 55 cents a mile for state reimbursement for gas, right? So if you do this many miles, that's what you're getting. That's for your transportation cost. If we give 100% of that, right, they could take their savings and put it towards, their teachers, and then they know that. But the problem is they never know if the state's going to pay 75%, 85%, or 15%, from each legislative body. It's sad.
Yeah. And I do know, and you're right, I think transportation would be an easy one to figure, because like Salem, SCA schools, these schools, you're not going to change too much in mileage year to year to year. It's going to be about the same amount of miles. every year, and you might want to tweak the number, what the value is that year, what you're reimbursed. But you're right though. I think if you do that, and occasionally we have to run to Kirksville for a game or something like that, you're going to have a few extra miles here, an extra field trip somewhere. But for the most part, though, you could pretty well, the state could kind of figure about what their transportation costs are going to be virtually every year.
I mean, so that's just, but it's too easy.
Oh my gosh, we don't want to.
That would be too easy. People could make that assumption that, hey, this is what we're going to get in our transportation on a normal. And you could even, if you wanted to say, school trips, you get this much for your school trips. But, in our rural areas, we spend a lot of money on our transportation costs because we're picking these kids up.
Well, yeah,
a lot more than your urban. I'm not saying not more than urban, but, they're, I had 120 miles in my last district to get from my house to Thayer. So that, our rural districts take
know it well, my friend.
So, yeah, you do, don't you? But it's just trying to figure out an easy way everybody can be the same instead of free and reduced lunch. And this open enrollment thing, another thing that bothers me about that is they'll pay for some of the kids' transportation to these other schools if they meet a certain criteria. So now we're not only taking money from the school district. Are they going to have to pay for the transportation costs for my child to go to Cuba because that's what I wanted, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, so you get into, and I understand that because I can afford to drive my daughter, right? But someone who doesn't have that capability can't afford that, so they're trying to make it fair for them. So, but is it really fair when you're taking that mileage away from the school district that has a budget, and now these kids want to go to another school, and we have to pick extra money to pay for them to go that extra mileage?
Yeah, there's some really weird stuff with that. I had a friend who had a daughter who was in the gifted program. Mm-hmm. I don't know enough about the gifted program, but they lived in St. Louis, and he lived in North County, and the gifted program, the school where they were holding the gifted program was in South St. Louis County. They sent a taxi every day to get her. I don't have any idea what that had to cost, but that's about a 65-mile round trip. Now, I know what a taxi would cost me, 65-mile round trip. It's going to be close to $100 a day, if that would be the case. But, Desi was picking up the tab. They weren't paying it.
Well, we are.
Yeah, well, I meant, but supposedly Desi's paying for this gifted child to go. But when you hear that and you're thinking, just like you said, it's not Desi. It's all the taxpayers in the state paying for this girl to get a free taxi ride down to South St. Louis and back every day. But they had enough students in the northern and central parts of the city. Why didn't they have another school? They were using another school anyway. They were using one classroom. That's all it was.
I don't know. I just think we've gotten to the point where our education system is so broad. I talked to a gentleman as a matter of fact, in Thayer, when I was down there before, that was on the school board. He's an attorney. He says, we only need to teach reading, math, and reading comprehension. He said if they can do their math right, and that they can read, and you can teach them to comprehend what they can read, they can learn science. They can learn these other things. Sure. And we focus our attention a lot of things. And I'm not an expert just by any means, but if you think how simple that is, if I can comprehend what I'm reading, if I give you a book on history, you can read the history book and comprehend that. Right. I mean, we get all these other different things we think that they need, but we need to just educate. If we got away from some of these other social and other issues, they can learn them when they get out of high school or whatnot.
So one of the things they brought up last night is the state, obviously Desi's going back to the MAP and the APR. They're going to release that next month for Salem for like the last 3 years because with COVID and stuff, they didn't really worry about all that. But now your attendance is now critical again, and now what they get on those MAP tests. And sometimes I think we lose track that there's a lot more to be learned than just what's on the MAP test.
Well, prime example, and I'm not going to point fingers at any school in this area, but you can actually look at, we got 4 rural schools, right, that come to R80. Right. They do the MAP testing on all 4 rural schools, right? And being on the school board, I was pretty adamant about watching, and we look at them, we're trying to push issues at, but if you look at the students that come from the rural schools and come to R80, and look at the scores when they're in R80 at 9th and 10th grade, you can see a definite. The MAP scores don't mean nothing technically if you look at them, because if the kids come to R80, all 4 rural schools are learning the same thing from the same teachers,
Right.
and each one of those kids, they might have had a 90% score in one of the rural schools, but when they get to R80 in 9th and 10th grade, they're not excelling above the rest of the rural schools, right. But they get great MAP testing scores. So, I mean, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but that definitely shows you them scores do not show the kids are smarter than. Mm-hmm. They're just I'm not saying they're teaching the tests, but they're maybe better at taking tests. Some people are good at taking tests. Maybe they teach them kids how to take a test and feel more comfortable, but it doesn't mean that MAP score does not mean that they're smarter or excel in the education program. And that's a prime example to look at. Look at all the rural school kids that come to R80 in 9th and 10th grade compared to our 80 school kids. You can kind of see what kids are, and I'm sure that flows up and down because some kids are more education, have, catch on quicker, on that kind of stuff. So that's a good way to assess your students when they go, especially we have that here.
Right. Because
they come from the rural schools to the main school and they can see how they do and whatnot.
What's your opinion of the MSIP program and CSIP program because I remember when it first came out, it was to get everybody standardized for accreditation and everybody's supposed to be the same. Well, that was, we'll call it MSIP 1, MSIP 1 is now MSIP 6. And it's totally different than what it was years and years and years ago. But it puts a lot of burden on schools to have a lot of documentation and things. Do you see all of that being necessary? I mean, because teachers can't teach if they have to worry about an MSIP, policy over here or whatever.
And that's kind of why
it seems to take a lot away from what their duties are, teaching children.
I think you see that in every state or agency. In the patrol, we started having to do more paperwork and more to validate our existence. And is that micromanaging the system, or is it? That's where we got away with when they make these rules up here.
Right.
They're not letting the school districts make these decisions because I lose money here. I can't do this. I can't put salt on the table. I can't do this. All these things is where they should. And I'm a local control kind of guy. I mean, I believe our county commissioners and people should be making them decisions. Our school boards should make them decisions. Now, we get into, some of these school boards make these decisions, these social justice systems that I disagree with. Well, my kid wouldn't go to that school, right? Mm-hmm. I would do everything I could do or get on the school board to change that. I mean, and that I will throw this in is, as far as when I was campaigning,
right.
And I'm not bashing on anybody out in the community because we have to work daily. We try to feed our kids, and that's important to us. Politics sometimes is not important to us until you see it on the news. I don't know how many times I'm out campaigning, knocking doors, and I'm getting to my point about this issue, is I'd hand them my palm card or my push card to say who I was, my family, what I believed in, and I put Republican because them are my values, right? And they say, "Oh, you're a Republican, I'm going to vote for you," or "You're a Republican, I'm not going to vote for you." They didn't ask me my true intent mm-hmm. and ask me any questions about that. So they looked at that one word and they're going to vote for me. And I would always follow up with, I am, that's my beliefs, but you need to vet me and look into me before you vote for me, because we do have some legislators in the House currently that run as Republicans, and they're either a Libertarian or a Democrat, and they can't win as a Libertarian or a Democrat, so they put Republican on their card, and people don't look and I'm not saying that bad, that people don't seem to have time because their jobs and whatnot, but I think we as citizens we just expect when we vote the school board in, they're going to do the job, and then we find out that they're allowing this kind of sex education in the class, and we get up in arms. We don't stay involved, and I'm a true believer after doing this, I need to be more involved. Everybody needs to be more involved. They need to contact my office. They need to contact county commissioners, the city mayor, and let them know their input, because we don't know if you don't tell us. You just expect us, and then we make a vote or something and you don't like it. I'd rather know ahead of time and get educated. But getting back to your point, they've made all these rules and the parents don't know about them, and the schools will just do them, and then we just accept that's the way it is. I think we need to not riot. Don't get me wrong, but I think we need to voice our opinion and say this is not right.
Yeah, to me, I think and to do it every 3 years and redo the same thing, and to me, it's rehashing the old ground. I remember a quote by General Patton: "I don't want to win the same ground twice." So if you've already gone through this and you've already prepared this, why are they making you go back and review it again? To me, it just sounds like a waste of time. And I just think, okay, you can go tweak things. You can go review it. Yeah, go take a look at it, but you shouldn't have to rewrite it.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's because of politics are getting pushed all these different issues that different people have social issues that they're pushing. I know for a fact whenever my daughter was at R3, there was a goalpost made. You have to get this part, be an upper echelon. Right. They moved that about 3/4 of the way through the season, and she ended up being below that goalpost, but she was at the same part, right? We could never figure that out why that was moved. They did that, it was in the middle of the season.
Really? That's crazy.
And it's like, and we never could get a reason for that. There's people up there in these offices making these decisions, and I can make an assumption of why it happened is, they needed more money or something here in these other schools, and they had to up the goalposts so they had the money to pay here, here, and here, or to give more things to these other schools. That's why, this DESE making these rules, how they pay the formula, they can manipulate that formula, and they probably did that to manipulate the formula to get the money to certain places. I mean, this should be pretty simple. If you got a student, this is what you get, and you got transportation, that's what you get. We're not going to go into low and reduced lunches. Why mess with that? If you give everybody the same, they can go ahead, and there's programs that they can fill out to help them, right? Mm-hmm. But I think the school should get the same amount per student, and if there is a pot out there for low and reduced lunches, which is a different area, because that's different, right?
Sure.
That's
right.
not an educational thing.
Nope.
But there is some facts that if the kids are hungry, they're not going to be able to learn as well. So we do probably, that's went a long way from when we were growing up.
Oh, there was no such thing. Long time ago.
But no, I think there's a lot of legislators
that walk to school uphill both ways in the snow and bare feet.
That's right. Yeah, that are looking at DESE and trying to say, why are we doing this? And somebody told me they're re-looking at the formula again. I'm thinking, who makes them decisions, and is it coming from the federal government to the state, and then we have to do that? I mean, so we should be able to make. I feel the local schools should be able to make decisions if they want to put ice cream in their cafeteria. We shouldn't be mandated that we can't.
Yeah, I hear you.
So.
Well, let's get off education for a minute, or for a while, maybe for the rest of the day. Okay, there's a lot of other things going on, and we know that there's been a lot of money circulated out there right now. I want to kind of just talk to you a little bit about. We all know that there's a lot of different bills that come before you all the time, and some of them will affect our area more than others. So when you're reading a bill, or somebody comes to you and say, "Ron, I need your opinion on this bill," are they looking for your opinion for our area that you think your constituents are going to be worried about, or are they more worried about just getting another vote for their bill? I mean, can you kind of,
I think
when you read that bill, can you kind of get a good feel for what they're approaching you on?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, had a gentleman the other day, I'm on Gen Laws Committee, and he come to me because he's got a bill here on Tuesday, and it's about general contractors and different issues, Okay. Now, that may affect my area a little bit, but most of the time when they file a bill, a lot of them guys represent a certain district, and they have certain issues in their district. Right. And when they come to me, what I do is, okay, is that an issue in my district, or could it be? And that's how I look at that. And if it doesn't affect my district or has no effect on my district, I have no problem supporting their bill, as long as it's not a negative effect on here or whatnot. And if it is a negative effect, we get to talk, say, I don't like this about this, and some will change it because they didn't realize the issue, or they just go through it, and I end up voting no. But the most of them, most of mine, I won't say most of mine. This year I had 2 different organizations asked me to carry a bill for them, which benefited this whole state, But if it benefits the whole state, I considered it benefited my district, right?
Sure, yeah,
So I mean, them two I might discuss a little later, and some of the other bills that are being carried this year that are priorities are public safety bills, and a lot of them are directed towards the St. Louis area. As you know, and most of the state knows, St. Louis is one of the most dangerous cities in the United States.
Can't say it's not far behind.
You're right, and as a legislator, I think we need to give the opportunity to the cities and the local people to take care of that. But when I'm here and I go to St. Louis ball game and I leave immediately, if it's a daytime game, I go. If I don't, I won't. I mean, so that does affect everybody in the state, the safety. So I will support them bills to help, St. Louis citizens if the local government is defund the police, and that avenue it affects the whole state.
Right.
It affects business coming into the state.
You bet it does.
So that's a bill that I would support, and I did support on some of these. I was part of making an omnibus public safety bill. So that affects the whole state. There's several bills that I had that affects the whole state. But I had people in my community come to me and ask me about that. For one, it's kind of like the nonviolent felons possessing a firearm, right? I arrested a guy 30 years ago, and it was a felony. He's got a business here in town now. He's been in business for 25, 30 years, an upstanding businessman. He can't possess a firearm because of an arrest I made, right? But he's done his time, and it wasn't a violent felony arrest, right? He just made a mistake when he was younger. And I had other people come to me and say, this happened to me. He held down a job for 30, 40 years, and he can't go hunting because he can't possess the firearm. But that'll affect the whole state. And that's already got on a bill that both sides appreciate that. I had one guy tell me, he says, I'm a gun grabber, but I like the fact that we're giving people back their rights after they've done their time, Right. So, I mean, I think that affects the whole state, and to be honest with you, it would save the state over $1.5 million for corrections of putting these people back in jail or dealing with them. So that's kind of how them bills come about. Some of them, I had some people come up this past week, and they were politicking for pay raises for certain people, for elected officials in the state, and it would have upped every elected official in every county to a minimum of $90,000. I think we were talking about that earlier. Mm-hmm. I says I support a pay raise for these people, but I think it's not fair to make Shannon County pay $90,000 for an elected official, or even Dent County, because I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but if you look at what everybody else makes in the proportion of what that county has.
What kind of income does that county make?
Yeah, I did ask him. I said, whatever the elected official makes $90,000 in your area, and how many employees do you have? And they were kind of stepped back. I said, I don't oppose a raise, but I don't think it's 90. I can see 60 in your area, but 90,000 is way more than the average salary or your constituents that you asked to vote for you. Sure. I mean, so that's the kind of stuff it's hard to tell somebody that to their face. And I might have lost the vote, but my thing is I'm here to support them, but support my people as well.
You got to let people know, and that's one thing that I've known you for a long time. You're pretty much a straight shooter. You don't usually hide what's on your mind.
They might hurt me sometimes, but
you're very diplomatic about it. But at the same time, if you don't agree with it, you're not going to sit there and whitewash it and say, well, I need to think on that more. If you're not familiar with the bill, you'll say that, or you're not familiar with what I'm talking about. You'll say, I need to do some investigating on that before I give you a really good answer. But if you already know it, you're going to say, look, I just don't think that's appropriate for this situation, or that's too much money, or that's just not going to be needed in our area. It just doesn't fit. The money doesn't fit the duty. It just doesn't.
And I followed up with her. I says, maybe you needed to do a percentage per size of the county. 30% raise for Schedule 4 counties, or you got 1, 2, 3, and 4 counties that you have. One is St. Louis, and them guys that have they may have 50 employees underneath them, so that may have needed a $90,000, but if you have 2 employees in Dent County, do you need a $90,000 raise? I know you do the similar things, but you don't have the people and the workload, different
Well, yeah,
workload.
the volume of.
And I said, so you guys need to come up with a fair way throughout the state to pay each employee. I mean, Shannon County has 6,000 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dent County has 15. How do you assess it that way, or how do you do
You
that?
kind of have to.
So I just given them an idea that you need to look at this, because I don't think you'll get the support to do that on some of these rural counties that are. And it would have come out of the state budget, but the state budget comes out of the taxpayer's budget, and it's got to be passed on every year.
Well, that's one of the things that I wanted to just bring up a little bit about the state budget. We've seen a lot of the CARES Act and ARPA funds come in, and this has been used to give people raises and stuff of that nature. And tax monies have come in nicely, and with, Super Bowl and Cardinal success and Chiefs success and Missouri success this year with basketball and things of that nature. All that helps the economic development, with be it sports or be it our agribusiness or whatever it might be that we have going on. But at the same time, the CARES Act money and the ARPA money are not replaceable funds. Once they're gone, they're gone. Do you have, in your opinion, I'm asking your opinion now, because you've seen what the budget has been, there have been some pretty substantial increases that I don't know how we're going to pay for in 4 or 5 years, that I have seen come through, that we're raising the people for MoDOT, we're raising this and raising that. How's that going to get paid for in 3 or 4 years? Are we going to have to up our taxes to keep the level that they're getting? Because I don't see it. I just can't see, if we're not collecting enough taxes now without the ARPA funds or CARE funds, how can we afford it 5 or 6 or 7 years down the road?
Well, from what I understand, speaking with the governor's staff and things with our economy, it has grown. Believe it or not, it has grown during COVID.
Well, I know.
I
know.
So, I think the raises that you've seen now, the MoDOT raises, I think that was a whole different deal. That came from the gas tax, and I don't know where
some of it's come from the gas tax.
So the rest of it is. I would have to look into that part, but I think from talking to the governor's staff, the raises that they're giving can be given without any tax increases in the future, if the economy stays the way it is.
Okay.
I mean, that's where you get into that part. So it may end up being, they say it's unheard of for us to be in the legislature at this time with the billions of dollars that we've got, because it's never been that way. Mm-hmm. So in a few years, we may be. I'm still not in the area to make them decide. I get to vote one vote on that.
Sure.
I would like to see investments that are reoccurring investments that we don't have to keep reoccurring, and that's what them ARPA funds, the way I understand, was supposed to do, is invest in things when they first come out that would they were to help sustain the COVID issues, the people until that got over. Mm-hmm. And now, way I understand it was there was a phase where it says the investments need to be something that will enhance that in the future that you don't have to spend on. For one, like Montauk. I'd love to see a new lodge at Montauk, and that's an investment for this area that would bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars in the next 50 years, because if we invest in that particular thing, it would bring money back, and that's a one-time investment.
Sure.
Pay raises are continuing investments that we're going to have to validate for.
A new lodge at Montauk would be an income generator of its own, though.
Yes. So
you can see a payback there.
And also, I work talking to DNR, conservation, and even the concierge, the person who runs that. All three of them are willing to invest in that. It's not just and even the county. If you look at what the county's done, trying to fix the road coming back into, that portion. And Montauk is one of the top 3 parks that's visited in the state. And it's in our area. I feel that's an investment that I can work on, that I'm working on, that might pay dividends even when I'm gone.
Sure.
And
many years.
Roads are good. All them things all that stuff is needed. I'm not saying that, but if they're having money out for investments for future instead of fixing roads, I want to try to help that part out. That's just a priority that I'm trying to work on, and it's going to affect the whole county.
One of the things which the city has applied for, a lot of the CARES Act money the state had was used to try and help people with these one-time costs, wastewater treatment, sewer improvement, infrastructure improvements. I think that's great, because that money definitely these municipalities can't afford to go in and change out their entire sewer system.
Yep.
It's just people have no idea how expensive that would be, and just to have to do what they have to do, I think that's been a fantastic possibility where they're allowed to do that. My only thing is that we know the Department of Natural Resources works with the EPA, and they try and come up with these ideas, but they put a lot of pressure on every district out there. I'm not just Ron Copeland's district, but any district with small towns in it, because when they find a flaw, if they find some violation, by the time that they get done scrutinizing it, Ron, there's no way that municipality can even pay to fix it. Because the EPA, there's nothing about them saying, I can't fine you $25,000 a day. There's no way they can fix it. What are you going to do with these towns? I mean, if it ever gets to that situation. And this is why I'm not seeing any common sense in our government. Hey, let's get it fixed. Let's keep these towns going. But if you're going to sit there and threaten them, hey, you're not going to be within this level, you're going to be in trouble. We're going to fine you every day. Where are they going to get the money?
I don't understand that. You can find the city, but how are they going to pay them?
Yeah.
I mean, it's another agency.
So if you bankrupt the city, what's going to happen? You're not going to fix the problem.
The state's going to have to come in and fix it, right?
Somebody's going to have to fix it. Who's going to pay for that?
Yeah, that's something that I know there's a lot of funding for sewer issues. I mean, through DNR and whatnot,
and they've done a great job with that.
And a lot of that is ARPA funds that was given to them for that specific need.
Exactly.
I mean, but once that's gone, we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do with that and to move forward, to be honest, because I'm thinking, it is unheard of for the money that they're throwing out there. So I think we need to be very, not picky, we need to do a very good job of what we spend it for. And I think some people are not doing that. I think from what we got here, you're trying to do some courthouse upgrades that we didn't have before. And that's a decision that was made here locally. There's a lot of things. They're building jails, with that stuff. And that enhances the community as well, So I would like to, I know the governor's pushing some rural money for roads or secondary roads, which would benefit us a little bit, so they're trying to do the right thing, but the way I understand it, the budget's been done. I mean, everything's been spent or been allocated to a certain place. Now we're getting into, does the House agree and the Senate agree with what the governor wants?
Yeah. And what I was bringing out, because Salem got their $5 million grant for their wastewater treatment, and that's great. But did you see the list of applicants that were trying to get money on that? I mean, there was 162 applicants, and we got it.
In Salem or from?
No. Statewide.
Oh, yeah,
that's 162 to try and get money, and only 39 of them got funded.
So that's the thing that I've been trying to work on when I see these grants come out, because I feel certain towns and cities in the state, and you can look at who gets grant money, but and I will give credit to our Salem Economic Department and chambers and the city officials to apply for that, like Sally Burbridge. If it wasn't for her and being on and MRPC being on top of them things, you have to be the squeaky wheel in some ways. I mean, there's some towns that I see in throughout the state that get enormous amounts of grants, but they have a full-time grant writer sitting right there to push that button immediately when they see it. So they're in that pick most of the time. I always get discouraged when I see where money comes to a certain thing and my district didn't get it, and I'm trying to get ahead of that step to see how I can be involved in the step before it's approved. And that's a learning curve, right?
You bet.
So this is my second term. I'm just thinking I need to jump in on that. So 2 years you've been vacant, right?
Think of what you learned your first 2 years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And in 8 I'll be gone. So you lose all that knowledge, right? It is. We're not going to go into term limits, but it's you have to hurry up and learn stuff. And it's I was blessed to have people that I knew that was up there already. I'd been in the process with the Troopers Association and the legislative process, so I kind of had an idea. And just taking my 28 years of trooper up there, I already had some respect from the members that were there, so that didn't hurt at all. I mean, so
Open some doors.
it opened a lot of doors because when somebody shows up there and they, I'm not saying that they didn't have a career like me, but you got a 25-year-old that just graduated college. What door is that going to open? And we had some of them, so,
But it's an educational process, and you learn. But just getting back to some of this money that's available, you don't have access to all those applications. You don't know what they submitted, why they didn't get funded, or whatever. But if you look at the list of those towns, most of them, 98% of them, Ron, they're all small towns.
Yep.
They probably can't afford to have a grant writer, and
Yes.
they're trying to do it on their own. They don't know how, and so they get turned down. Is there going to be a supplemental one to find some other money for them? Because their problem's not getting fixed.
I don't know if there's going to be supplemental. I know that if there's money left over, they always sometimes give a roundabout again. But that was one of my biggest pushes in my old district with Shannon and Oregon County. You need an economic development person because they were getting left out all the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, they had a regional planning commission as well. And I'm just saying, a Merrimack Regional Planning Commission is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, the information they put out, what they're on top of, they do an awesome job. So, and our county being part of that benefits our county. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, and buts, because in my old counties, there's one county that was not a part of. They never got nothing for years, and I just found out they got $9 million for broadband. And I'm sure it's through the SCOCOG, which is Regional Planning Commission down there, but that commissioner was involved with SCOCOG, and this let them know their issues, and they were on top of it. Thayer and Alton both were involved in that. So it's the squeaky wheel kind of does that. Some of these people think they can't get the money, but it's there, but you have to ask. And I'm all for, do I need to write a recommendation for you? And I've done several of them for the cities when they come out and say, hey, can we do this? I think I've done it, for Salem, or Armory things. Anytime they ask for something that they're applying for a grant, if I can help do that, sure. And I'll throw a pimp something in here. I disagree with all these people having grant money, because if they got money to be given away, they're taking too much of our money, in a way. If you get right back
I hear
to
where
it,
you're coming from.
they get all this money to be determined where it goes. But, it's there. And if it's there and I'm not trying to get it for my district, then I feel I'm not representing, because some other district is going to take it.
Well, and that's what you've come to learn, too, very quickly.
And it is. And I don't agree with that policy, because the money the state has that much money in the federal government. But if I don't fight for it, then I feel my constituents lose, because somebody else will take it.
Well, and kind of to explain what Ron's talking about, there's $100 million sitting in a pot, and you don't put your hand in there to try and get it, you're not going to get it. There's not going to be any left in there, because everybody else's hand's they're going to just suck it all away. So if you don't do anything to try and get that money out of there, you're never going to see it. You just don't get any.
And that's one of my biggest things is that when I see a grant thing, I've got an email thing that I'm sending out. I'll send it to the commissioners, to business owners, the chambers, so they know that grant's there. And they may already know it, but I feel if I see it and not pass it on, there's no way they can do that. I've done that to sheriff's office numerous times. It says, we didn't know about this, and they get to apply for the grant. That's the biggest thing, is they don't know it.
Yeah.
So if I don't know it, I can't do nothing. If I don't know the problem, I can't help fix it. So if there's a problem, I have no problem contacting my office and working through the process. And I'll tell you if I can fix it or hook you up with somebody who can.
Well, I do appreciate all you have done for a lot of our local things. You have supported them with letters and endorsements, and that does help a lot. One of the things with our technology of our world today is that there are a bunch of grants out there, and if people want to go find them, they can. And they're for every different reason you can imagine. So you can go out there and find them, but doesn't mean you know how to get them, and I think that's the big thing. I wanted to ask you, because we're got a few minutes left, there's got to be some things that you would want to address today. I want to make sure that we are giving you that opportunity to do that. As I want to tell everybody that Ron Copeland's here today, filling in for Daryl Skiles. Daryl's still got some concussion issues. He took a little blow to the head, and he's had some symptoms come out of that, and so that's one of the reasons why I don't ever, when somebody says something about concussion, they laugh it off. If you've ever had one, you're not going to laugh it off. It can last, and it can last a long time. So hopefully Daryl will be back and be ready to describe things going on in our county again. But Ron has graciously filled in for him today. And so, all right, my friend, I know there's some things that you've got to have on your mind that have been probably recent in the legislature.
Well, there's been a lot of legislative issues about public safety.
Okay.
I mean, that's one of the big things that's going through the House right now and Senate. The St. Louis prosecutor not prosecuting, we all know that.
Right, heard that.
We're trying to address some of that issues. Kind of talked about the violent felons getting gun rights back. I think that's a good way to do things. Sometimes, and I was a trooper for 28 years, so when I arrest them, they got a sentence, and when they're done with their time, we continue to hold stuff against them. Mm-hmm. Last year, we just passed something that I didn't realize this, but a felon couldn't sell lottery tickets.
Oh,
so
yeah, I can see that. I can see why, because it was a state lottery,
but they've done
right?
their time,
right.
And once they've done their time, them are start level positions. They're already having an issue getting a job, being a felon, right?
Sure.
So we passed that where they have that ability to now work there. If they're going to steal it, they're going to steal it if you're a felon or non-felon, right? So, I mean, we're trying to figure out some of that issues. One of the bills that 301, House Bill 301, also addresses some issues with criminals getting out of prison. We're releasing inmates from prison, and they don't have a birth certificate, they don't have an ID, they don't have all these things, and we're saying, hey, go out here and be a citizen, right? Well, they have not had that ability. Them are some vital things you need. Look how hard it is to get your driver's license if you have to go in and get your driver's license, birth certificate, and all that stuff. So we're this bill tries to look at some of that, because this was a compromise bill to say, what can we do to help them get back, be good citizens into things. So that bill also addresses, gives them, this is a heartache with some people, gives them insurance for 6 months. That's a heartache with some people because they were inmates that committed a crime. Mm-hmm. But we're trying to get them to be back in citizens again. If they've done their time that they were sentenced to, they get a birth certificate. All that stuff has to be given to them before they get out. So when they get out, they're already in the process of, they've already got that process taken care of, and can't use that for an excuse to go commit another crime. The other one bill that I did file, finally, I filed an HJR, and that's a House Joint Resolution, and that's a bill that has to go back to the people. Mm-hmm. And basically what that does, I was unaware that state agencies, and I'm not going to mention what state agencies, I'm just going to be generic on this because I don't want to point fingers, but I was unaware that state agencies sold the natural resources in the state, throughout the state, and they pocketed that money and put it in their general revenue and spent it how they wished. And I think I addressed some of this in the past, but Shannon County had $2 million worth of natural resources taken out of it in 3 years. And that money proportionally did not go back to Shannon County. And Shannon County is one of the poorest counties in the state. And I know I don't represent them anymore, but I feel they took $173,000 worth of natural resources out of Dent County several years back. And none of that money came directly back to the county in which it was taken. I found out that they lease property to farmers, so much an acre, and they pocket that money. I mean, so this bill, HJR 61, all it says is no state agency can profit or take revenues from our natural resources. And it has to go back to the people, right? Mm-hmm. And it just makes the accountable. And I had a companion bill that follows that up because the companion bill tells how the money will be spent, right? Last year, one of the agencies got $6 million off of one particular natural resource, and they put that in their coffers. And that's a year after year thing. So the companion bill, basically what it does is says that 25% of the funds will be administrative fees that can go back to the state agency for you're going to have people overseeing these things. Got to
collect it, got to account for it, you bet.
So I don't want to keep them out. And then 25% will go to the school district in which it was taken. And 50% of the funds or revenues will go back to the county, to their general revenue fund that they can spend any way they wish, right? Mm-hmm. So because it was a natural resource in their district. For instance, Dent County had $173,000 worth of natural resources taken out of them several years back. And that would have been an R4 school district. So R4 school district would have got roughly $45,000 of that, and the county would have got $85,000 to benefit. And you think about it, it's probably a rural low property tax piece of property anyway, right? Mm-hmm. Because of the natural resource. but I just felt that is constituent based. I think it directly reflects these rural areas that have exorbitant amounts of natural resources. The state should not be able to take that and spend it the way they want. The county in which it was taken should be benefit from that.
I agree.
That's one of my biggest pushes. I'm working on that the hardest. But that'll go to the vote of the people. If the vote of the people want that, they want it. If they don't, I can't do nothing about it. But you got to remember, the rural areas are the ones that are affected. St. Louis and Kansas City, they don't have no major natural resources like we do here, you know. So,
well, unless they have big property up in the city areas.
and most of the time they probably don't, because you're talking about logging or farming
Right.
issues, you know, and that's where you get your exorbitant. This one agency just bought 5,600 more acres down in Carter County. I mean, so it's just it's frustrating to see the state agency's mission put a negative effect on the people, the citizens of the state. So that's the main one. You know, I have two other bills that I got asked by agencies to do and wrap back, and I think this is going to affect teachers and daycare people the most. That is a program where you have to be fingerprinted as a teacher when you're dealing with children. Mm-hmm. The program required teachers to be fingerprinted and put a background check every 6 years. Yeah. So the agency come to me and said, we want to do away with that. Once you've been fingerprinted and you're working for that agency, why do you have to keep coming back? Well, at the time it started, they used that money to fund the program. So I do got to put kudos to the patrol for saying, hey, we don't need the money anymore. We don't want to put the burden on the teachers and daycare
right.
people and take that away. So, I mean, I think that's good for our school district. I'm glad that they come up and said we don't want them to do that for them. So, but I'm always available. You know, if anybody, I'm going to pimp my office and whatnot. You know, you can contact my office, email ron.copeland@house.mo.gov, or you can just go on house.mo.gov and it'll bring up the web page and you can find out my legislation. And right. If there's issues, send me an email, call my office. Like I said, if I don't know, I can't fix it. If I can't fix it, maybe I can get you hooked up to somebody that can. And you know, people just want to have somebody to represent them. So
that's right. Going right back to those connections again, those doors that you open, being a patrol officer, and you know that, and the friends you've made and the acquaintances you've made. That's why experience really does matter sometimes, because it may not be something you're familiar with. You talk to somebody, so yeah, I had to deal with that. This is who you contact.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we got a diverse group of representatives, from bankers, lawyers, I mean, farmers, I mean, business owners, and you know, when a open enrollment bill comes, you go talk to the superintendents that are in the house, and ask them what they think, you know, and how's it going to affect this, and you know, when there's police bills, a lot of people come and ask me about public safety issues, you know, and I tell them what I think, and you know, it's just good to have that knowledge to fall back on.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time, coming in, filling in for Daryl, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you soon.
Well, I'm like I said, I'm here to try to be available, and be sure to have your prayers for Daryl, and hope he gets better. And you know,
saw you at the ball game the other night. I saw you.
I try to go to that. You know, I need to get up to Cuba and Bourbon to go to one of their ball games. It's just kind of hard to get to that.
Districts are here, buddy.
I know. So I don't want to forget that. But that's where I'm going now. I'm headed to Bourbon to meet some people and try to get out on Fridays and meet people and see what I can do.
Well, we're glad you started your day out here, Ron.
Thank
you very much for coming in. Representative Ron Copeland, and again, why don't you go ahead and give that email again for it, so if anybody needs to get in touch with your office.
It would be ron.copeland@house.mo.gov, or you can just always go to house.mo.gov, and the page will pop up, and you can find me as a member on that page. Get all the information you need.
Very good, my friend. Thank
you very much, Stan.
Appreciate it. Keep it here, KSMO Radio. We've got civic happenings coming up short.